Well, my name's Perry, and I'm passionate about working together with people to create a better world. And I think leadership has a lot to do with that. I think the way that we lead as individuals, as people, as teams, as communities is fascinating, and it's really, really important as we try to take on the big challenges in our world, from poverty to COVID to climate breakdown. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about kind of helping other leaders to create more impact in the world.
All right, thank you so much about that, Perry. Now, because you made mention of COVID, you are in the UK. Can you tell us how the situation of the situation of COVID-19 there around where you are? I mean, what are the people feeling? I know we are coming out of it because, of course, it's a situation that we are all going to come out of. But tell me right now.
Well, so I'm actually in the United States right now. I'm based between the UK and the United States, which is interesting because you can watch. I'm watching kind of two countries go through this, and I think very unfairly, these two countries have relatively high vaccine rates, and there is a growing sense that we might be heading back toward normal. I personally think that's rather naive, and I think it's wrong. I don't think. I think we're still going to be dealing with variants and having to face COVID for many more years. And a big part of that is how unjustly the vaccines have been distributed globally. As you well know, that Africa has not received very many vaccines, and as a result, all going to be dealing with COVID globally. I wish more people saw COVID as a global problem, but I also understand the human side here, and where people are feeling a little bit safer, and as a result are feeling a little bit more relieved. So you see that, but I think we have a long, long way to go, and especially here in the United States, it's very different depending on where you are. We're in Connecticut right now, and there's very high vaccine rates. But at my home in Tennessee, less than 40% have taken the vaccine, and we're going to have a very unequal distribution of this disease, and it's going to be around for a long time. And I think some people are happy now, but I fear that we might have more sadness ahead of us.
All right. Now, in a situation like this, of course, the question of leadership become very important because, of course, when people are faced with challenges like we have today, they usually need a type of leader they should look up to. I mean, a kind of leader that is responsive, that is able to lead the people, not necessarily give you order. Of course, we are going to be talking about this one shortly. So, how important do you think quality leadership is right now? Of course, looking at it whether on a nationwide or a global, from a global perspective.
I think leadership is fundamental. I mean, apart from community engagement and local action, I don't think there's anything more important in leadership in this kind of situation. And sadly, it's been very clear the price we've paid for bad leadership in a lot of countries around the world. I mean, the US and the UK are shining examples of how badly two or three leaders responded to the COVID outbreak. And it's almost a case study in how not to lead. You on one hand, you have kind of countries like New Zealand who've done very, very well. And you have, on the other hand, you have countries like England and the US who have done terribly, terribly with the COVID response because leaders didn't do what they had to do. They did not face into hard realities. And that's, job one for leaders is to acknowledge the problem, and to communicate that problem with everyone. It doesn't mean you have to panic people. You can still say it's going to be okay. But, in both the US and the UK, we watched Boris Johnson and Donald Trump deny this crisis. We watched them hide behind others. We watched them blame others. We watched them fail to take action. I mean, bluntly, cowardice. They were afraid to upset people. They didn't take action. And as a result, tens of thousands of people died for no reason. And so it's an utter failure of leadership, what's happened in at least these countries. And you see that in Brazil, and you see that everywhere. Many countries have failed. Where countries have gotten it right, it has been strong leadership. And I think strong leadership in this kind of situation is largely about two things. One is acknowledging the problem, whether or not that's popular. You have to say this is bad and it's going to be bad, but here's how we're going to tackle it, right? Because people aren't stupid. They know there's a problem. And the second thing is, I think, communicating to people it's going to be okay. Look, this is really hard and it's really scary and it's really tough, and we will come through this. And this is how. And I think so many politicians have failed because they didn't want to take accountability. That's a hard thing to say, that this is a real problem and we're going to find a way through it. And a lot of politicians chose a cowardly route and acted like it wasn't a problem, and they blamed other people, and that simply, failed. It's not the way to lead.
Thank you so much, dear Perry. This is really a very interesting. In fact, it's good that we started from that global perspective because that is where the people are right now. The people are really living this reality. So we started from there, from what the people actually are living at the moment. Now, let's go back to you. How did you get started with leadership as a topic, as an argument?
Huh. That's really good. So I work in international development, and I started out like most people did at community level, organizing community level action, local action, small organizations, and supporting people to create change. And I think that's where we all should start this field. But the reality is, somebody like me needs to work themselves out of a job. I am a Western white straight man. I should not be leading community projects overseas, right? Communities can lead that. They have the legitimacy to lead. And I think, as I learned that through my career and learned that I need to step back and play more of a supporting role, more of a facilitating role, I focus more on leadership, both to build up and support, leaders at scale in their countries and their communities, because they're the ones who have the answers. They're the ones who have the legitimacy to lead. But I can help them to grow as leaders. And I think in so doing, I kind of fell in love with the art of leadership, and I found that that's the best way that I can add value, by running organizations that do good work and by supporting leaders to take that journey themselves. And so to me, it's a passion. It's what I do for fun in my free time. I write a blog about leadership, and it's how I understand my role at work, to multiply other leaders to create more change, because boy, do we need it. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world that we need to rise to, that we need to solve, and that doesn't just happen on a couple people alone. You need hundreds of thousands of leaders, and that's what kind of really excites me, gets me out of bed in the morning.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. The other day I was interviewing a guest who said, usually who would say we need good leader, we need quality leader. So this lady was saying, no, of course, looking at the perspective from the point of view of Africans, no, he was saying, no, we don't need one leader who believe it now. We need everybody to believe in the dream. Let everybody be working together. We don't just necessarily need to sacrifice one person. So what is your take on that? In that, because you just made mention of community, whether you're referring to a community or maybe a nation, is it really the leader that should be in the front, or do we need everybody to believe in the same dream so that we are basically in the same boat, going together, sacrificing together, working together to make the dream work at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you want, it can't be about one person. It cannot be about one person. And we have history to see that. Every time a leader thinks there's something, there's such danger with leadership where people get corrupted by power and they think it's all about them and they start to make all the decisions. And, it's simple math. What's going to be more effective? What one person thinks or what 100,000 people think? And the ideas that one person can generate, or the ideas, the resilience, the solutions that a whole community can create. And don't get me wrong, it's easier to be a top-down leader. It's a lot easier just to tell people what to do, right? That's easy. These kind of strongman leaders, that's a really lazy type of leadership. It's very easy to send out dictates and to tell people what to do. The other way of leading, which is kind of more collaborative, it's more communicative, and it helps people to kind of come together. That takes a lot more work, and that's a lot more art. But that's the only way you have real lasting change, because if it's all about one person, the moment that person leaves, you see power vacuums, you see indecision, and you do not have sustainable change. And so I think it's always got to be about groups of people. And as you say, that community can be, that could be a village, or that could be an online community. It doesn't really matter to me, but it's about more than one person coming together to kind of craft this vision and to create the change. Now, with that said, you still do need people playing leadership roles to facilitate that, to perhaps make decisions with the group. The bigger the group you lead, the harder it's going to be to reach consensus. You can't get 100 people to agree on anything, right? And if you go into that room and say, we're all going to figure it out together, you're probably not going to get a result, right? You're just going to get people arguing. And I think the role of leaders is to facilitate that conversation, to lead that conversation in a way that's fair, that's inclusive, that brings everybody's voice and the best ideas into the room, and makes it so that, but also makes it really clear how the decision is going to be made, right? We're going to vote on this, or I'm going to decide, or whatever it might be. At some point, the leader has to own the moment where we say, this is what we're going to do. And by own, I mean not power, I mean take the accountability, right? Because you've got to, at some point, you have to take a plan, you have to take an action, right? And that's what leaders really do. They facilitate that conversation to draw up the best ideas, the best solution, to craft the best possible course of action, understanding that no one person has that in their head. But when the moment comes to take that, they take responsibility and, good or bad for what happens there. And they communicate with that community, and they keep working with that community, and they hold themselves to account. That's the only way I know to lead. I think these kind of strongman leaders, they fail. They fail every time. It might be okay in a war, but it's not okay in anything else. That kind of leadership needs to go. And the kind of leadership that allows communities and people to flourish, to thrive, to bring all of their individual strengths to gigantic problems, that's what we need.